Assalamu alaikum, adab, hello, and welcome to yet another session on liberal arts education, creating leaders for tomorrow, brought to you by Habib University. So admissions are currently open at the Habib University for all our 6 innovative programs. And we are specifically looking for future leaders in engineering and technology to join us. So I'm your host, Dr. Ahmed Usman. I'm associated as an assistant professor with the Electrical and Computer Engineering program of the Habib University. So today I will be asking our esteemed panel about the comparative advantages of studying engineering in a liberal arts-centric education environment, particularly from the context of Pakistan. So let me introduce our panel for discussion for today. We have with us Dr. Fred Lecture. He's the founding director of Center of Collaborative Creativity, also known as the Hive, at the Claremont Colleges in the United States. His center is working with a mission to accelerate the creative development for students through exploration, collaboration, and experimental learning. He's also a clinical professor of engineering at the Harvard College. Dr. Lecture previously worked as a senior vice president for design thinking and innovation at Fidelity Investments, where he led teams to focus on user needs and experiment for faster innovation. He was also associated with the Stanford's famous design institute, known as the D School, as a faculty member. We also have with us Mr. Adil Saleh, is the head of talent acquisition at the Habib Bank Limited, Pakistan. He is a professional with over 20 years of diverse banking experience in branch banking, service quality, operations, consumer assets, and human resources. We are also joined by Dr. Basit Maiman. Dr. Maiman is working as an assistant professor in the Electrical and Computer Engineering program of the Dhanani School of Science and Engineering at the Habib University. He's the program director for the Electrical Engineering program and the assistant dean for the Dhanani School of Science and Engineering. Dr. Maiman received his 2 masters in electrical engineering and mathematics from the Georgia Institute of Technology and also had a doctorate degree from the same institute. Dr. Maiman conducts his research in the area of mathematical system theory, which deals with the mathematical modeling, analysis, and control of systems. He's also a Fulbright alumnus. Our last panelist for today is Ms. Narjis Zehra. Ms. Narjis Zehra is an electrical engineering graduate from the batch of 2020 of the Habib University. During her undergraduate, she remained highly active with the Transdisciplinary Design and Innovation Lab at Habib University, which is commonly known as the Playground. She worked there as a design thinking trainer and a design researcher. Currently, she is pursuing her graduate education in product and service innovations at the Carnegie Mellon University in the United States. So thank you everyone for joining us and a very warm welcome to all of you. So we know that engineers hold a very important position in today's world. Whatever they create requires deep thinking and analysis through its implications. It is therefore paramount for an engineer to remain socially conscious and cognizant of the implication of its inventions on the social fabric of the world. Habib University is producing engineers in line with this reality. Our young and future leaders are taught to demonstrate knowledge and the need for sustainable development. The curriculum, with its sound contextualization developed at the Habib University with the context of liberal arts, sciences, and engineering, teaches these young future leaders of science and engineering to understand the impact of engineering solutions in the societal and environmental context. So I am sure that all of you have many questions about liberal arts and engineering, and I will be helping you in getting these answers from our esteemed panel. So without any further delay, let us start with Dr. Fred Lecture. So Dr. Fred, again, thank you very much for joining us and giving us your time. So my first question for you is that how did your educational philosophy evolve over time, and why do we need liberal arts education with engineering for our future generations? Dr. Lecture.
So I don't come from a traditional academic background, as you heard. I was a mathematics major in college and then went into the computer field and was a computer programmer on Wall Street in New York, and then ended up in an innovation team doing design. And I designed Fidelity's very first website back in 1996, when the internet was this thing people weren't really sure was going to catch on. So I then landed at Stanford as a fellow and learned about design thinking, and realized that I had always done a good job as a designer through instinct, but I hadn't focused enough on the people at the other end of the world, at the other end of whatever I produced, and really started to reflect on people as at the center of anything that you design or anything that you would engineer. So liberal arts is about the humanities and about humans and people. And so it's intrinsic that it should be at the center of an education. One of the things that I say is the simplest form of what I do is to teach people to fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And so we want to train, and Habib trains engineers to think hard and not to be so convinced they have the right technology to solve a problem, but to make sure they really understand the problem, and then are flexible and varied in their thinking and their approach, and also approach problems with an expectation they do not have the right answer. They couldn't possibly have the right answer in the first try, in the first solution, the first design, the first engineer. So having that flexible thinking and being exposed to multiple disciplines broadens those skills and produces engineers who will be able to be flexible in a world where we're facing increased velocity of change. And so old technologies won't work all the time. We'll have to be flexible and have to learn and think about things from a multidisciplinary perspective.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Lecter. So my next question would be from Mr. Saleh. So what are the key traits that you are looking for while hiring fresh graduates, specifically related to engineering across Pakistan?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me today. I think the students who are going to view this video, the recorded video, would be very interested in this particular question. When we hire people, and especially if we talk about their engineering background, so one would expect, the analytical mindset and everything. So that's fine. But in addition to that, what we also look for are other qualities in a candidate which only a liberal arts background, education background would bring. And as they come into the company, in the bank, initially they can start off with the experience, with the knowledge the education brings, gives to them. But as they progress in their career, they have to be armed with other with more knowledge than just engineering. And that's, I think, is where the liberal arts background comes in. So I think they, in the end, they become more successful because they're more socially conscious, and they're more aware of the issues just, besides the engineering background. So that's what we look at. We look at a whole a holistic view of the candidate, not just the relevant the degree or the knowledge that the degree gives. So I think that's what it is.
Thank you, Mr. Saleh. So my next question will be from Dr. Basit. Is that please illuminate us regarding the strengths of the liberal arts and engineering program we have at the Habib University. What are the competitive advantages the students have once they graduate with an engineering degree from Habib University?
So let me comment on this combination of liberal arts and engineering education. So Fred and Mr. Saleh have already commented on it. I'll add my perspective to it, that in the present day, the kind of design problems that engineers are being asked to tackle, they increasingly involve complex systems where humans are necessarily part of the system. So previously, where the constraints for engineers in terms of their design problems were in the form of the materials or the specifications that they had to deal with. Now the constraints for these problems are cultural, economic, psychological, sociological, environmental in some cases. And this is exactly the stuff that liberal arts is made of. Liberal arts education is good at dealing with. So I think currently a combination of liberal arts and sound engineering education. So we definitely focus on covering our technical grounds, having a rigorous sound engineering education, and that is exactly what we offer at Habib University. I feel that enables our engineers, our graduates that we are producing to tackle the problems of tomorrow. And even on a more practical level, as Mr. Saleh was also pointing out, there is good evidence that this combination of liberal arts and engineering education that students receive, the skills that it builds in the students, they transfer across industries and careers, and it helps in the progress of the students in their careers, especially when they reach their mid-level careers.
Thank you, Basit. So my next question is from Narjis, and I would like to ask you that who or what convinced you to join the ECE program at the Habib University? How do you rate your experience for opting for a liberal arts engineering program at Habib University after your high school?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dick, for having me here. If I'm being completely honest, the time when I joined Habib or the ECE program, I had little to no information about what really Habib is or what liberal arts is. In fact, so I'm the first girl from my entire immediate and extended family to pursue higher education, that too in engineering. So it was a very difficult, I would say, a very nebulous start to my career at that point. But downright, I think Habib has been one of the best things that has happened, especially because as a fresh, high school graduate, we're very focused on a very myopic definition of education, and there are very limited paths to it. It's either doctor, engineer, finance, accounting, one of these things, especially in our society. So one of the things that perhaps Habib has really, and especially the liberal core, has really helped me is just expanding that view of education and exposing me to different forms of knowledge as well. And due to which, it was only because of my experience at Habib that I got introduced to the field of design. And design outside of visual communications or graphic design or product design, but design as an entire field. I think that's when really all of my career journey actually pivoted as well. What I'm doing right now is very different from what you typically expect an electrical engineering graduate to do, but it is as technical, I would say, as it can get. It all depends on the domain, the problem statement, and the approach that we take towards the same problems that other engineers might take towards a problem.
Thank you, Nargis.
It's important for the students to understand something, and that is that, like Dr. Lecture was saying, he had a degree and then, he's done multiple things in his career. I did similar something. I mean, my degree was totally irrelevant, totally not related to what I'm doing right now. So, if you're an engineer, you're probably not going to be an engineer for the rest of your life or be doing engineering for the rest of your life. And this is something that they need to understand and appreciate, because by doing liberal arts, by getting exposed to so many different, subjects and areas, you never know, because they might start engineering, but then, most of the organizations today have programs where employees can diversify, go into different functions. And that is where it helps you, because you suddenly start, taking in those, that knowledge that you got from your education, from your liberal arts background, and using that. That's one. And the second is, as you go up the corporate ladder, you're probably not going to be doing pure engineering, you'll be managing engineers. So, that's where it comes. I mean, that's where it becomes so important that you have that additional knowledge and that different facets of that education. So I think it's brilliant if you have a background in liberal arts. Thank you.
Thank you. So my question from Dr. Fred lecture would be that, sir, what leadership traits do you think are necessary for future leaders in the field of engineering, and how liberal arts engineering education help in development of these traits?
I think the number one leadership trait that one needs is to be a good listener and to be empathic and humble, and to understand that you don't. It ties in just to what we were saying about being adaptable to change and understanding what people need. And so, a good leader talks less than they listen, and is able to understand the motives and the direction of the people they're solving for, and the motives and the direction of the people they're working with. And all of that comes from it comes from empathy more than anything. It comes from being able to settle in and persevere and adapt, and show don't tell is another thing we say, that they can demonstrate those qualities in themselves as they're working with the organization that they are and the people that they are leading.
Right. I would also like Dr. Basit to comment on it, and also Mr. Saleh to comment on it as well.
So I'll completely agree with Fred there that empathy is an absolutely essential skill. I feel that's a core skill towards collaboration or working as part of a team. And even if you look at surveys that look at the desired job skills for the various kinds of teamwork or collaborative skills would come up on the very top. I would just add to it that in the evolving technological landscape, a part of this working effectively as a team, our engineers or our graduates also have to figure out how to even view computing as a team member, to effectively figure out what or effectively see or play the team to their own strength, and not force them to do tasks that can be easily handled by a computer. And just if I were to add some other skills to it, I would say that the ability to be comfortable with complex systems, to be able to make sense of complex systems, to visualize them, to tackle complex systems, that's also, I feel that's going to be, or it's already an essential skill to be an effective leader in tomorrow's work. And just the last comment, these are all skills, by the way, liberal arts is extremely great at delivering, because by its very nature, you are required to look at multiple perspectives and make sense of multiple perspectives, do a critical analysis of multiple perspectives.
Thank you, Basit. Mr. Saleh.
I couldn't agree more with both the gentlemen, because when you're working in an organization, you're dealing with humans, and it's very important to have those skills. And as leaders, I think I 100% agree. You need to be able to listen, take criticism, be open to ideas, be flexible. And whether it's somebody younger than you giving an idea, I think it's important for you to have a continuous learning throughout your career. And that's the only way you can keep abreast with all the changes, with all the different methodologies of working with humans. So I think all these traits are very important.
Right. So I would also like you, Mr. Saleh, to comment on how do you think that liberal arts undergraduate education gives an edge to the candidates over the other candidates who are coming from a non-liberal arts background, specifically from the banking industry side, because you have a very vast experience in that industry. So I just want to know what is your comments on this thing.
I think I covered that part. It gives you an added advantage, I think, and so if you talk specifically about banking industry, it's become so diverse now. It's not your traditional banking that we used to hear about, that it would have components like departments like human resources or finance or IT or audit. But now we're talking about financial inclusion. We're talking about information security. We're talking about design labs. We're talking about incubation centers. So having a background in liberal arts would empower the candidates who are joining the banking industry to be flexible, to move in various departments as they go into their careers. And, it also broadens their horizon also. So, I think that's what the main focus should be. So they learn so much. And, you're an engineer, but you don't know if you'll have, you might come into sales. And if you're in sales, then you need to be able to talk to people about different things in life, not just about engineering. So if you like music and if you've studied music, or if you studied arts, or if you studied philosophy, just gives you a lot more to think about, to talk about as you grow into the organization. And I think it broadens the vision, it broadens the mind, allows them to think in a different manner as compared to being just myopic and just thinking about their particular field.
Basit, since you are being involved as a program director and associate dean with the School of Engineering, how do you think the students are prepared for an advanced undergrad program, especially coming from a liberal arts undergraduate engineering program from Pakistan? I would like you to comment on it as well.
I think it goes back to the idea that we were discussing earlier, that this combination of liberal arts and engineering education, it prepares students for a variety of careers. And that includes going to graduate school as well in a number of disciplines. You're not just constrained to one particular discipline, whereas Mr. Sai was saying earlier that you most likely would not be, and you absolutely do not have to just stick to one of your career choices that you have made when you were, say, 17 years old. So for if you talk about graduate school, the abilities that are required for graduate school, I think the topmost ability would come out to be looking at differing perspectives critically and trying to make sense of them and coming up with new ideas. And essentially, that's a theme that runs through the liberal arts engineering education curriculum. So to me, I feel that it's well, and there's even evidence, if you look at essentially even our numbers or the numbers of graduates from other liberal arts universities, you would see that a high proportion of them not only are accepted at reputable graduate schools, but they also do extremely well at those graduate schools. I think since Nirjis was back and now she is.
Okay. So Dr. Fred, I would also like you to comment on this part with a little extension that we have seen liberal arts education mostly at an undergraduate level, and a few institutes, they have some sort of graduate program that deals with with liberal arts program. But when it comes to specific engineering or, for example, medical related disciplines, do you think that we need a sort of amalgamation or an interdisciplinarity at the graduate level with the liberal arts as well?
I do. And this comes into what Nirjis was beginning to talk about, I think, in being an interdisciplinary graduate program at Carnegie Mellon. if you get a group of engineers together and give them a problem, they will come up with an engineering solution. If you get a group of economists together and give them the same problem, they'll come up with an economic solution. If you get a group of doctors together, they'll come up with a medical solution, etc. If you get a group of philosophers together, they'll come up with a philosophical solution. And they will be predictable in a way. Now, if you put one of each of those together, and this is a thing that I was part of at the Stanford D School, you will get a much more interesting solution that hasn't been seen before. And so this is at the core of it. So the engineer who can communicate with the doctor, the lawyer, and the economist and the philosopher, who can listen to them and can understand their perspectives and be part of a team as a leader from either the front or the side or the middle, will be part of creating things that are much more innovative and much more robust in their potential. And so I think absolutely you're seeing we're all very interdisciplinary in kindergarten and elementary school, and then we get shaved into narrower and narrower slices often, and that's what I think a liberal arts education starts to change and starts to broaden, and it should absolutely continue into graduate studies and into the professional world. Like what Mr. Sala is describing in the banking is not just financiers anymore. It is people that understand humanities, and that's what I've experienced in my career as well. And so the earlier we train students to listen and understand different perspectives and different skills, and not have to master them all, but be able to pull them together and integrate those things, by far the better.
Right. Mr. Saleh, I also want you to comment on extension of this fact that there is an initiative taken by HBL in Pakistan, and we are seeing such initiatives by other corporates in the country, that they are trying to move ahead from the traditional way of hiring people. And they are having a little these sort of what we call at Habib up the playground, and what Mr. Lecture has developed, the Hive. You guys have also, I think, have a center of something like that, where you have hired people from various disciplines, and they are coming up with interesting solutions for banking industry. I would like you to comment on that as well, please.
Sure, but before I do that, I'd like to share why I was smiling. And the reason I was smiling was because, it's funny we're talking about all of this, but, I have two live examples in my bank where the CHRO, the Chief Human Resource Officer, and the CFO, and they're both extremely well known in their own respective fields. They're both engineers. And, when you put an engineer as a head of HR, imagine what kind of solutions that individual is going to find. And you put an engineer as a CFO of the largest bank in Pakistan. Imagine. So, I mean, it's I've got two real examples where I have myself seen how the added analytical mind as an engineer comes into play, doing something totally different. So, anyway, I was just thinking of that. We've moved away from the traditional pattern of recruitment, primarily because our ambition, HBL's ambition, is to be a technology company with a banking license. There's so many transformatory things that are going on within HBL, different apps. If you talk about the agri sector in Pakistan, that's one of the largest sector in Pakistan. We're talking about empowering the farmers with drones to do insecticide, to spray pesticide in their fields, to have apps, tablets to actually order the material and to contact the end user. So it's empowering everyone to rely more and more in technology. And by doing that, we've realized that we also need a lot of, we have to move away from the traditional management sciences that banks used to, attract, and move towards the technology part, the engineering part. And that's primarily one of the reasons why we approached Habib University, that we wanted to tap into your talent, your student body. And it's primarily because there's so many opportunities within HBL for students with engineering backgrounds, with computer for computer science background, for data sciences. So our recruitment system is very different. It's totally automated, more or less. We moved away from your traditional testing to gamification. Candidates create their own profiles, they play the games, they get assessed, and they are part of the database for the line managers to choose from, which is also automated. So during the COVID times, for almost 18 months, the entire talent acquisition team was sitting at home working from home. And we did exceptionally well as compared to pre-COVID. And that was an eye-opener because none of us were going to office, but since everything was automated, we were doing everything sitting at home. So we've moved away drastically. The challenge now is to create awareness amongst the students that banking can be one option for them, which it wasn't in previous times 20 years ago. So that's what it is.
Great. It's very insightful information. So coming back to Narjis, where we lost you. So we were talking that how well you were prepared for your graduate school education after a liberal arts education undergraduate experience at Habib University, and how do you think, or what advantages do you have over your peers who are coming from a non-liberal arts background specifically at CMU?
Great, thank you so much. I just lost my internet connection for a few minutes. So yeah, the point that I was trying to make previously was that I'm working with so many different backgrounds right now. The ones that I listed: healthcare, policy, engineering, finance, business, designers, and architects, so many different backgrounds. And I surprisingly do very well communicating with them. And I would say that it essentially came out of the training that we got at Habib, where even at Habib, engineers were not just siloed into the projects lab or the ECE lab, but we were all going to playground. We were all taking the liberal code together. My entire final year project was an interdisciplinary project where we simultaneously worked with social development and policy. So one of the trainings at Habib that is currently really helping me is knowing how to talk to people across teams in a very cross-functional manner. So I would really put emphasis on that's one of the skills that we've acquired. And one another thing that I wanted to talk about was the engineering mindset, which is very prevalent, we see in Pakistan, is actually very universal. I see engineers here from all over the world, and every single one of them, if they're coming from a technical only background, no matter what the country is, no matter how excellent the country is doing when it comes to R&D and the kind of projects that they do, but they're all very scared of the fuzzy front end, the ambiguity that comes in when we're taking a project that is not an engineering problem, but we want to create an engineering solution for it. So I think that is what liberal arts, along with my engineering background, has helped me, is navigating through that fuzzy front end, through that ambiguity, and knowing that engineering now, for me, is not application of just natural sciences that we have grown up believing, but it's the application of both natural sciences and social sciences, because the nature of problems that we're solving is becoming increasingly, as Dr. Basit and everyone in the panel just mentioned, that it's becoming increasingly more complex. And if we come in with the mindset that, okay, someone else is going to provide me the product requirement document, business requirement document, and I'm just going to code it and create a solution, that doesn't work anymore. Or if it is right now, then I think it's high time we change that approach towards engineering and towards problem solving as a whole. So I think these two are the main things that when I look back at what my training was at Habib, what I'm doing at CMU right now, there is a correlation between them. That is, how I'm able to survive at a very, very intense institution, only because I had previous background and training in working across teams.
And one more thing, do you recommend people doing liberal arts with engineering?
Oh, for sure. I could not be more glad about the gamble that I did 5 years ago, but one of the best things. So for sure, I recommend it.
Great. The gamble paid off. Nice to hear you. So moving ahead, Ajit, so I just want all of you to comment on how do you think that Pakistan can benefit from amalgamation of liberal arts and engineering education, or if we are going to think of the next or engineering 2.0 curriculum in Pakistan, how do you rate or how do you think that liberal arts with engineering is the next way forward? So I will ask start with Mr. Saleh, please.
Sure. I think Pakistan can benefit in more than one way. One would be the success of each organization, each firm which is working in Pakistan. That compounded becomes, a success for the country itself. But also from the point of view of the students, they become more marketable. They become more. They can switch industries, and they can work in multiple different industries. So they're not limiting themselves to one particular industry or one particular field. So banking has traditionally been the most sought after employers because they were stable and good atmosphere. But now you've got so many other companies, so many other industries which are coming up, and by having a different a diverse education background, they become more marketable. They can switch, they can see new areas, and they can actually work in those. So the compounded effect would be obviously for the country itself, and that would be one way that it can succeed.
Great. So I would like Dr. Fred to please comment on this. So how can countries like Pakistan can benefit from engineering education along with liberal arts flavor?
Yeah, well, I love the phrase that Najis used earlier about the fuzzy front end. And I would say there's often a fuzzy middle and a fuzzy back end also. And so you need to be flexible in approaching things, and because the world is changing so quickly. And I also want to just commend Habib by having a place called the playground, right? We need to bring more joy and play and acceptance of failure into the work that we do, whether it be in Pakistan or anywhere in the world. And so because it makes us better colleagues, better contributors, and lead a more joyful life, and those things are as critical as how you rise on a ladder in an organization, because that is where the fulfillment in one's life will come from. So I think it's essential, and because of the environment we're in, and I also love the idea that you can gamify the hiring process, right? And so again, there's a game, there's play, there's joy, and that is coming into these worlds that are so serious. And we're in a world where we face serious problems, but it's ability to change the perspective and do that as a group that is so important.
Great. So yes, Dr. Basit.
So I'll just start by echoing what the previous speakers were saying, that in this emerging and evolving market, we are not training our graduates for a very specific kind of job or a very specialized career. So the liberal arts and engineering combo, it gives them that option, those skills, those abilities to be able to opt for multiple careers. And on top of that, I would say that when Fred was mentioning his example earlier, that the engineer would come up with his own solution, the doctors would come up with their own solution, and the philosophers would come up with their own solution. I was actually thinking that the philosophers would not even get started on working out on a solution, and that's completely fine. So the liberal arts education also helps you challenge those preconceived notions, preconceived hypotheses. And that's what we also need in Pakistan, to come up with new markets, new innovations, new ventures, creative output that we can do to contribute to the country's economy. And finally, I would say that it just does not help you in your career, but this education also helps you be a conscientious citizen. So I also want to see our graduates be part of governance, be part of improving the systems in our country. It's not just the career, that's not where we stop.
Great. So Nargish, your take on it, please.
Yes. I think we right now more than ever before need socially aware, empathetic, global citizens that are actually a part of the engineering community as well. Because I remember, I think it was either Noman Saab or Asif Saab in one of the earlier core lectures, they would mention that every problem is a communications problem. And I cannot agree more to it, because it is all about how you're delivering, how you're the very intricate play between language and communication and rhetoric and all of that. And that all translates into engineering as a solution as well. So I think liberal arts is one of the starting points in education, informal education, where you can increasingly become more aware, more vocal about your existence, empathize with others that coexist with you and share spaces with you, and try to create a better place in terms of either devising a solution or understanding the problem. And they both go hand in hand. So I think liberal arts is very important when it comes to making us more conscious of ourselves at the very, very core of it.
Right. So before we go to our last question, since Mr. Saleh and Dr. Lecture both has worked into the investments and banking industry, I suppose that both of these industries are somewhat related. I would like you both to please, if you can share any instance in your professional life where you actually, you and your team benefited from engineering, liberal arts education, and the traditional, say, banking and investment people basically benefited from engineers and design thinking approach, and something interesting out of the box came up. And if you have any interesting instance to share with the audience, I would just like to both of you to please share. Whosoever wants to go first, please.
I mentioned one already, which is that I was involved in designing Fidelity's first website, and before anybody, and so that was a technology that was new, and an implementation, but it became suddenly focused on what people could see and what they could use. And suddenly all of the phones that we had been using to drive the business, Fidelity Investments had amazing infrastructure that allowed call centers and phones, wasn't as necessary, and it was still used. And so the business, we went from 2% of transactions being online to 96% in 10 years. and at 10 times the business. And so at the end, we still had just as many people on the phones. We just had exponential growth in what the business offered. The second example I will give is a project I worked on later on, which was to understand the unmet needs of aging and intergenerational finance. And so people are living longer, but there are still in the United States and in many parts of the world, there are all kinds of taboos about discussing finance with your family, and then people pass on and things haven't been decided or worked out. And so we started trying to understand that. And that led to, it led interestingly into a very large program around student debt, college student debt, and having people understand student debt better, and then to have companies offer the benefit of loan repayment as part of a benefits program before they offered retirement benefits, which is something that somebody just out of college or graduate school wasn't really interested in when they were looking at a mountain of student debt. So on the one hand, it's being able to adapt to new technologies and think about how they might be used as an engineering thinker. And the other, it's being able to adapt to a changing world and understand problems and needs that maybe didn't exist before that have not been met.
Wow, that's really cool. So, Mr. Saleh, you have anything to share to us? Please feel free to.
I'll just share something. Each day that we spend over there in HBL, it's trying to, putting on a different hat and thinking from the customer's point of view. And when I say customers, we're talking about the internal customers as well as the external candidates who interact with us for job opportunities. And, one aspect is your analytical, which is trying to find the best possible way to and the shortest possible to reduce the turnaround times and to increase the efficiency, and so all of that good thing. But from a humanistic point of view, we also try and wear our customer experience hats and then think from the customer point of view as to the customer experience and as to what experience they're going to get out of that interaction with HBL. So, at one end is your pure analytical part, and the other is the human part, and it's trying to merge both of them together, trying to find out the best solution. So trust me, my boss as an engineer, we come up with very different, innovative, out of the box solutions to different problems. So it's fun. So, but yeah, it's fun every day.
That's great. So my last question to my all panelists is that what is your message to the students who are interested in pursuing an engineering degree from a liberal arts education perspective? So
can I go first? I really have to say this.
Sure, please.
I did my undergrad in US, and as from my personal experience, I had to take all sorts of unrelated subjects for the first 2 years, and I used to hate my life. Why do I have to take sociology? Why do I have to take philosophy? It has nothing to do with business. It has nothing to do with getting an MBA or a bachelor's. Little did I know that I would start relying and using those knowledge that I learned now 25 years later when I'm working over here. So my message to the student is that you need to be thankful that you've chosen this. Number one, you're lucky that you have this option of getting such a diverse kind of knowledge, and trust me, you're going to use it one day, and you'll realize that you're using not just your engineering knowledge, but the other stuff, the good stuff that you learned, which you think is unrelated. So that's my message to them.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Saleh. So yes, Dr. Fred, if you want to please add something.
I would just say the experience of meeting and understanding people with different perspectives is invaluable and all of that. And so being in those classes where you don't feel comfortable, where you don't understand exactly what you're getting out of it, is also going to sustain you in your career and in your life. And so embrace that diversity and those changes.
Great. So Basit, please, if you want a message for people who are interested in pursuing liberal arts education and engineering for future, or for our future young leaders in engineering and science and technology, what's your message?
Right. So I'll start by saying that kudos, you have made an excellent choice. And follow that with come to Habib, you would have a lot of fun. And finally, during these 4 years, as Fred was also pointing out, those classes that make you uncomfortable, take more of them. You will miss this opportunity later. So expand your frontiers, expand your breadth as much as you can. These 4 years would be the best opportunity that you would have to do that.
Nice. Yes, Narjis.
I think I just want to directly address one of the fears that students have when, taking a risk coming to liberal arts institution for engineering degree. Your employability doesn't reduce just because you're doing it from a liberal arts institution. I mean, we have Mr. Adil over here. He has attested it so many times. So, we can hear so many things of, our elder cousins who went to university, typical conventional engineering universities, maybe like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And if they're telling you that no, liberal arts is not worth it, and that's the way forward to it, just like get better sources of information. And at the end of the day, if nothing, you're going to have a wonderful time, if nothing.
Great, Ji. So thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure talking to you all. And I would say, I hope that our audience have learned a lot from the interaction with our esteemed panel. And I would like to again thank you all for joining us, giving time to Habib University, explaining the need for design thinking and liberal arts for the next generation of engineers to come. And thank you again. And for the listeners, I would like to add that admissions are open at Habib University. We are looking forward for our young and future leaders in the science and technology and in social sciences and all of these areas. And if you are interested and if you feel motivated after this session, do apply, do come to us and give us a visit at the campus. We'll show you around, talk to the faculty over at Habib, go visit our website. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So in the end, thank you very much.